What is up, Light Fam? Welcome to another video. My name is David, your spiritual awakening coach, here to help you through your spiritual awakening. Now, as you guys know, I've been focusing on the beneficial, positive ascension symptoms associated with the ascension process. And today's beneficial ascension symptom, how many times can you say ascension symptom in one sentence, is a game changer for a lot of people because you become codependent no more. Woo woo! Shout it from the rooftops. Now, obviously, after you have a spiritual awakening, you're not going to be instantly cured of codependency, but you will become aware of it. And once you are aware of it, then you can cure it. So let's take a deeper look into how your sense of self changes so that you have more clarity on how to approach the inner work needed to cure codependency. Right now, let's go. The ascension symptom of being codependent no more. So why does this happen after a spiritual awakening? Because a spiritual awakening sparks an overwhelming urge for self-discovery. Once your focus is on yourself, it is no longer obsessing on someone else or something else. So a spiritual awakening returns your conscious awareness back home to your center. The codependence awareness is not home, it's on someone else or something else, such as a vice of some sort. But why does codependency begin to dissipate after a spiritual awakening? Well, because now you have a drive to fix yourself. An aspect of codependency is being addicted to fixing others. So the codependent derives their self-worth from fixing other people. So their self-worth is infused in the problems of other people. Meaning, if the codependent is able to fix the problems of this other person, then they feel worthy. If the codependent is not able to fix the problems of this other person, then they feel unworthy. But after a spiritual awakening, you have a deeper understanding that your worth can never be dependent upon anything outside of yourself. One of the first and best practices that most people adopt after a spiritual awakening is they begin to do shadow work. So the cause of codependency lies in the shadow. The shadow contains the childhood trauma, such as abandonment issues, narcissistic abuse issues, neglect, etc., that causes codependency in adulthood. So if the child grows up feeling unworthy of love because of the parent's inability to show love and approval, or maybe there was an abandonment issue there, then that person will grow up feeling unworthy of love, and then they will try to get love by sacrificing their own needs and having almost no personal boundaries to save or fix someone else. And that someone else is almost always a exact archetype of the parent that never gave them love. And this can also happen when children are kind of forced to assume the role of adult at a very early age, maybe to take care of some younger siblings if the parent or parents were never around, or to take care of an ailing parent. But your level of self-worth and self-love begins to rise after spiritual awakening because you step into your independent sovereignty. Independent sovereignty means your self-worth is derived from within and not from without. So why does the ascension symptom of being codependent no more begin to take root in your current timeline after a spiritual awakening? Well, as I mentioned earlier, a spiritual awakening spurs you into the course of self-discovery. What does this mean? Well, you discover what your needs are. Imagine that concept. Thinking about your needs for a change. If you have childhood trauma that has programmed you to put your own needs last, you may have never stopped and asked the question, what are my needs? What makes me happy? What's my idea of a happy, fulfilling, and rewarding life? Or what is my worth outside of just being needed by somebody else? This is the beauty of a spiritual awakening. It causes you to look within. When you are looking within, you are not looking to someone else for your worth. So if you're struggling with codependency, have fun with this exercise. Write out a list of your needs and even write out why you need each need. This will give you a deeper understanding of who you actually are. And as that level of self-worth begins to rise, you will get the boldness to voice those needs. You'll get the boldness to set those boundaries. And this is usually the point where those unhealthy codependent relationships begin to fall apart. Another reason codependency begins to dissipate after a spiritual awakening is because a spiritual awakening causes you to self-isolate. This means that you are alone more often. One of my favorite quotes by one of my favorite spiritual teachers, Michael Beckwith, he says, "You've got to love yourself when you're by yourself." And this is what the codependent is really afraid of, being alone. Being alone equals abandonment for the unhealed codependent. The unhealed codependent believes that keeping the relationship together is their entire responsibility, which is entirely on their shoulders. And if they make any mistake, or they don't fix that other person, or they don't solve that other person's problems, then they're going to be left alone. But after spiritual awakening, you are called to be alone for a minute, be in solitude. And while you're in solitude, show yourself, hey, I'm all right. I'm okay. I didn't die. Right? Did you die though? Yeah, you're alone. So what? Did you die? And when you're in solitude, you no longer have someone else to distract you from facing your trauma. It's time to face that trauma and heal that trauma. The codependent subconsciously uses the other person to distract themselves from facing their shadow trauma. Well, guess what? Until that shadow trauma is healed, that toxic relationship is going to continue to show up. This is why it's so powerful to have a spiritual awakening, because it forces you to fix the root of why that toxic relationship keeps showing up. So no more pointing the finger at the narcissist. Oh, I'm in the typical toxic relationship between the codependent and the narcissist. I'm the codependent. I'm the victim. Narcs are always picking on codependents. Boo-hoo. No, sorry, that doesn't fly anymore. Heal your shadow and you'll stop attracting narcs. No longer being codependent is one of the best ascension symptoms, because you begin to get familiar with being an independent, sovereign being. A lot of codependents that are addicted to being needed, they will say, this is just who I am. This just feels right. No, it doesn't feel right. It feels familiar because that's all you've ever known, and that gives you certainty. But being an independent sovereign being will cause the ego to stir up a whole bunch of anxiety, because the ego loves that certainty. It loves the familiar. That which is unfamiliar, the ego finds very uncomfortable. So the ego will say things like, hey, I'm uncomfortable with this person treating me nice, or I'm uncomfortable with this person returning my texts and calls and not blocking me, or I feel uncomfortable with this person asking me about my needs. I feel uncomfortable with this person returning the love and respect that I'm showing. But once you have a spiritual awakening, you disidentify as the ego. You stop looking at life through the ego's lens. And once the ego is out of the driver's seat, you will now feel worthy to accept these new unfamiliar actions as a normal and healthy part of a happy, healthy relationship. Now, question of the day. How have you become less codependent after your spiritual awakening? Share those experiences with the Light Fam in the comments below so we can all learn from one another. If you need a helping hand becoming less codependent so that you can step into your sovereign authority, we can work together one-on-one through Zoom. Check the description below for that. If you have a question for me, add me over on Instagram _Lightways. Until then, I will see all of you guys in the next video. Light, love, and abundance to all that are watching, and to all you love. Peace, guys.